Grandma, otherwise known as Daddy Dragon. I'm just asking, can everyone see and hear me? So if you can see and hear me, jump out there. Good evening, DG and Patriots. Everyone's out there. Hit the like button, crucially important. Something is annoying me. I'll tell you what it is. It's that. I'll put that down to one side. Because it's a big white thing sticking out in a bar and it doesn't suit the rest of the bookshelf. Hit the like button, subscribe, and do whatever you do, like, share, because the only people getting this message out of you. There's more and more people talking about England and the Constitution and what it is to be English, etc. And I think it's because more and more people are understanding that we are an indigenous group of people with our own set of laws and our own constitution. And the more people understand that, the better. And what people are actually understanding as well, and I'm going to bring everyone onto this, hopefully. Let's see if I can copy this link. I will see if I can send this link out at some stage. It may not be possible to do it now, but I will try, because I'm like that. Let's have a look and see if this person is out there. Let's see if this works. You never know. I have sent a private invite out. It's really important before I kick off this to show everyone watching it. And again, I'm getting tangled up in my own wires like I normally do. I'm going to show everyone this because I think everyone should see it. Let's have a look. Cancel. Let's go for that. And then I'm going to show you another couple of bits before we do that. Hopefully that's come on. I'm not sure whether I should have the light on that or not. There's my light on. That's my light off. It's probably easier if I take the light off. Right, so everyone's seeing this. This is a document. It's called We the People. The Constitution of the United States. Its only keepers, the people, George Washington. Right, and then inside it gives you, by the way, if you are made an American citizen, you're given this, and it is everything in there written down. What I wanted to try and do was explain to people the Constitution of the United States with index, Declaration of Independence, and it also then goes through the Constitution, the articles, etc. There's another part I could go through there, which I'm not going to, but I am going to go to the amendments. All right, so the amendments are here, and this is all in one little pamphlet. You've got the preamble to the Bill of Rights, and it says the conventions of the number of states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added. So restricted the government, right? This is, people should really understand what's going on. That further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extended the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure that the benefit ends of its institution resolved by the Senate. And then it says articles, and then it goes through and it tells you what they are. Now, making sure that you understand this, you've got Article 1. The first 10 amendments, Bill of Rights, were ratified on effective in 1791. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assembly, and to petition the government for redress of grievances, right? All of that, in effect, comes from England, all right? So much of this does. Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. And free state means each independent state of the United States, independent states of America, right? It was never supposed to be one complete country. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, where did that come from? Well, what I'm going to do, hopefully, tonight is just to show you a few little parts of this. And we're going to get back to the main screen in a second. Who's that? Let's see what goes on. Let's see if I can go and bring it. Now, the other day, Jason in the USA brought up a particular case, which I'm going to bring across on the show now. This is all important, but it leads into something else, which I'm hoping people are going to find interesting and some amusement, right? Because it really is about our ancestors and the way they actually stood up and said basically F you to the government, right? And anyone else who tried to stop them. This is the English in particular. So the recent case, October term 2025, this was, but the final ruling come out the other day. It was decided June the 18th, 2026, right? Supreme Court of the United States. Now, this is unusual because all 9 of the Supreme Court justices completely agreed. So it was a 9-0 ruling, right? A bit like when we had a 3-0 ruling in the appeal court in the Royal Courts of Justice. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States of America, to give you an indication, I'm going to read out the first part of this so you get an indication of what I'm saying. United States versus Khomeini, certiorari, in other words, a declaration to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, right? So that's like our equivalent is our appeals court, then appealing it as on a point of law to the Supreme Court. Ali Khamenei is a dual citizen. There's them dual citizens cropping up again, of the United States and a Pakistan. And he's a dual citizen of the United States and Pakistan, who was born in Texas. He has spent most of his life living in the Dallas area with his parents and working a stable job. Suspecting Mr. Khamenei and his family members of terrorism-related activities, the government conducted a search of the family home in 2022. Throughout the process, Mr. Khamenei proved cooperative. He surrendered a gun he kept in the house, pointed agents to some marijuana on the property, and consented to an interview during which he told law enforcement agents that he used marijuana about every other day. Now, why is all of this important? Because they're setting the scene not just for this case, but for other cases. So what I'm going to do is go to another amendment. Well, actually, there's a few amendments here, but I've just got to make sure that people actually get what I'm talking about, right? So I'm going to show you something else. It means I'll have to take that off the share. Put this on there. Can you all see that one there? Remember what's happening currently with Charlie Staples. This is Amendment 7. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise be re-examined in any court of the United States that according to the rules of the common law, right? So the common law says once the jury's made its decision, that's it, right? Again, excessive bail should not be required. This is the next one down. Nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. Comes directly from the English Bill of Rights. The enunciation in Constitution, certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage other retained by the people. Right. The power not delegated in the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved for the states respectively or to the people. In other words, via referendum. And the important parts. There was a particular one that I was looking for because it was absolutely English in its terms. And I'm sure it had something to do with, it may have been that side of it. Amendment 5 or the Fifth Amendment, and then there's the Fourth Amendment, which I'll go into. The Fourth Amendment is quite important. And this comes from England, right? So all I'm doing is trying to make sure you can read that on your screen, right? The right of the people to secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation. In other words, the judge must sign the warrant and must swear an oath that he believes that probable cause exists, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized, right? Why is that important? Because this relates back to the Second Amendment in this case, right? So just to make sure everyone's got this, what I'm going to do now is go back to my Facebook camera and go back and tell you what this is all about, right? But I'm now going to I'm going to show you that and then take you back through some other stuff that's just as important. Let me bring that in. Al Helmy, dual citizens, etc. And then it goes in and it tells you what he did. So Mr. Helmy admitted the use of marijuana, but the government prosecuted Mr. Helmy under 18 U.S.C. 922 G3 for knowingly possessing a gun in his home while being an unlawful user of a controlled substance. Mr. Khamenei moved to dismiss the indictment, arguing that the government effort to enforce blah blah against him violated the Second Amendment. The district court granted the motion, and after an unsuccessful appeal to the Fifth Circuit, the government asked this court to review the case, right? Because they thought that the Supreme Court was going to step in and back them up, right? Held. The government's prosecution of Mr. Khamenei under Code 922 G3, unlawful user provision, is inconsistent with the Second Amendment. Pages 3 and 19 as you go down. The Second Amendment protects the right of all Americans to keep and bear firearms for self-defense. District of Columbia versus Heller, right? So it then talks about, everyone's should have heard me talk about Justice Scalia and Heller, right? Now this is important, this case. So I'm really grateful that Jason flagged it up to me because there's another case that it mentions, which is here, the one I'm just about to highlight here, right? And it tells you that it is a well established, and the right to keep and bear arms is a pre-existing right. So again, it was established in Brune, it was established in Heller, and it's now been re-established in this case as well. This is 9-0, and it's been almost annihilated, the case against them. Now, before I start getting into too much of this, I'm now going to go into the next part of the case. This is literally a flying chat about it. But I really want people to understand. There's a funny bit coming up. why this is so important to us, because America is a common law jurisdiction. The Supreme Court is the highest common law jurisdiction anywhere in the world. I would say now it is far in front of the English Royal Courts of Justice because of their populace, right? In other words, there's so many of them that they now outnumber us so much that you would have to take note of their law, right? And in law, you can use Supreme Court cases in other common law jurisdictions in your own defence and in your own case. I want everyone to remember that, right? So in this case, District of Columbia versus Heller, I'm going to take you to a couple of bits that are really important, right? Which is this bit here that I've highlighted. Meaning of operative clause. This sounds technical and I'm jumping right in the middle, so you won't get it until I get to the other points. Putting all of these textual elements together, we find that they guarantee the individual right to possess and carry weapons in case of confrontation. This meaning is strongly confirmed by the historical background of the Second Amendment. We look to this because it has always been widely understood that the Second Amendment, like the First and Fourth Amendments, codified a pre-existing right. Pre-existing, it came from England, not the British, the English jurisdiction, right? The very text of the Second Amendment implicitly recognises the pre-existence of the right and declares that only that it shall not be infringed. As we said in the United States versus Cruikshank, this is not a right granted by the Constitution. This is so important, right? It is not a right granted by the Constitution. Neither is it in any manner dependent upon the instrument for its existence. The Second Amendment declares that it shall not be infringed, right? What people listening to this won't understand the crucial element of what his words were, right? And if I'm really honest, in terms of historical inquiry, I don't think he realizes, right? But I'm about to tell you how this all fits together. Between the Restoration and the Glorious Revolution, the Stuart kings, Charles II and James II, succeeded using select militias loyal to them to suppress political dissidents, in part by disarming their opponents. See J. Malcolm, To Keep and Bear Arms, thereunder Malcolm, and then L. Schroeder, the Declaration of Rights, 1689, page 76, 1981, under the auspices of the 1671 Game Act. For example, the Catholic James II had ordered general disarmaments of regions home to his regions that were home to his Protestant enemies, right? And again, what I'm going to do is lean across here and show you something else, because I know you like it when I show you things, right? I know you're all smiling away in the background, right? So just to show you this, I'm going to stop that share. I'm coming back to this, right? But I need to show you this share there. Here is the actual book that Justice Scalia has mentioned in that book. It's the main book that I use to explain to people what the Declaration of Rights was in England and what the debate was at the time, right? So there it is, the exact book and original from 1981 that Justice Scalia had used. And here is literally at page 76. So that is the page that he's talking about, right? You're not going to be able to read it all, and I'm not going to read it all out. But it tells you in here the exact history from the debates itself, why it was we have a right to keep and bear arms. And when you study this book and the other book, which is A Kingdom Without a King, which tells you the true history of the King Billy coming over to us, right? This is where it gets fun. So I'm going to put that back over there a second, right? So everyone understands what I'm saying. In that book, for the first time ever, The author had been given access to the absolute debates of the time in writing, so you could see what their discussions were, and he put it all in writing. There were 27 heads of terms. By the way, does anyone know how many amendments there are to the American Constitution? There's 27. So in effect, there's 27 heads of terms of the American Constitution, and there's 27 heads of terms of the English Bill of Rights, right? Now, what happened is when they transferred it to the English Bill of Rights, it was really important that people understand this. They acknowledged, and this is where it was so important that you understand this part of what I'm saying. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to get straight up there and bring it up on your screen again. Why is it that this part of his judgment is so important? Because he acknowledges it was a pre-existing right, and it pre-existed the actual Constitution. Therefore, it was an ancient law and custom that was being acknowledged and could not be infringed. When they transferred it from the English Declaration of Rights, the discussion was it has always been a right of the English to keep and bear arms, even in Anglo-Saxon times. So what they did was they put it into the English Bill of Rights as public law, as an injunction against any future government ever trying to infringe it ever again. That's why both the Acts of Settlement and the English Bill of Rights both say, one, securing the rights and liberties of the subject, and then the next one says further securing the liberties and rights of the subjects, and it says that the laws of England are the laws of England forever, basically, right? Or are their birthright. They can't be taken off you, and they're all in singular. What's really important about this is they've just backed it up yet again, right? And that's 9-0. This is the number one common law highest court in the world has just backed up our right to keep and bear arms, meaning the English as well. Again, what's really important is Justice Scalia stated that it was a pre-existing right, and it pre-existed the Constitution. It wasn't the document that gave it to them. It already existed. It was being confirmed. Well, that's exactly the position of the English Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Rights in England of 1688 and 89. It was already a pre-existing right. It was just being reaffirmed. So everyone understood this. You can't take this right away, right? So that's part of the discussion that we're having tonight. So if people really understood this, they would be up in arms, excuse the pun, by tomorrow, saying, who do you think you are taking this off us, right? Well, there is a funny, when I say funny, I'm sure you will find it slightly amusing. I know I'm a bit sad, but I am now going to share you this, right? So, Firearms Research Centre, right? Let me see if I can share that with you. I think it's gone off the screen and it shouldn't have done. Was this, right? Now, without going further, all I'm going to do is explain this to you. Malcolm Gladwell's Invented Facts Make Good Stories by someone called David Koppel. Now, I don't know this guy, but he wrote this in September 14th, 2024. But evidently, he is a legal historian in the United States of America, right? And what he did was he went all through the story of it. But the bit that was funny, which I'm sure that you will find out, if you read this, was he brought up a case in 1686 where, this is the bit that's funny, just in case you need to know when to laugh, right? A guy called Sir John Knight, which I think you've heard me talk of before, bowls into a church in Bristol, right, tooled up, right? So they arrested him for terrorising the churchgoers or the congregation, just for the fact that he had firearms on him, and it ended up in the King's Bench Division with Sir John Knight saying, "I'm not guilty of anything." Right? It's all about intent, right? So Anyway, the funny part of this story, it's more that it turns out it's about John Knight, who is the person who made that. By the way, he was a Protestant, but almost a Puritan in the way that he thought about things, right? And he was very aggressive towards Catholics and more moderate Anglicans, right? Put it that way. He didn't suffer fools gladly, fellow, right? But I'm going to read out the whole of this because I think it's really important. Everyone thinks that English common law, on which the American legal tradition is based, was hostile to people walking around with guns. But it's not true. John Knight was acquitted. John Knight, it's a John Knight, goes up against the Statute of Northampton, really important statute in law, and John Knight wins. One side says the Statute of Northampton check, the other side counters John Knight checkmate. The checkmate and a check and checkmate line is clever storytelling. So this guy he's a how can I explain him? The person telling this story is a legal historian with no sense of humour. I would suggest is a bit autistic. Where if he starts hearing a story being told from history and it's not absolutely word perfect, he'll pull you up on it, right? But rather than ruin a good bit of storytelling, he keeps his mouth shut until someone mentions his name. And they've mentioned his name, and he said, right, now I'm going to sell you real history. So regarding Gladwell's claim that everyone thinks that English law was hostile to people walking around with guns in 1689, the English Bill of Rights was enacted. It declared that subjects which are Protestants may have arms for their defence suitable to their conditions and as allowed by law. This is the crucial part. This is the part that I keep bringing up to people. From then until 1870, when a tax was imposed on public handgun carry, no English law restricted an individual peacefully carrying a gun for lawful purpose, and it still doesn't, right? And there are no known cases of any such prosecution. It's all about intent, right? That's what the common law is about, intent, right? In Knight's case, the Chief Justice said that the Statute of Northampton had almost gone into destitute, right? Can you see that word there? I'll keep mentioning it to everyone. We don't have that, right? We don't have that. It's at the top right-hand side. Let me re-highlight it for you. We don't operate that. That's Roman law, right? That is, it had been unenforced for so long that it had almost become legally unenforceable. But the Chief Justice saved its statute, for he said that it is simply reflected a long-standing principle of common law, right? It reflected a long-standing principle of common law, right? This is the bit that's really important, and this is the judgment on this case, which you can use in self-defense cases in this country, as long as you do not have any intent to use it in bad faith, right? It simply reflected a long-standing principle of common law. Carrying a weapon is unlawful when done in malo and nimo, right? With bad intent. So if you've got any form of weapon that is only for self-defense, it doesn't matter what the weapon is, you cannot get done for that, because it is English common law and an ancient right and custom that pre-existed the English Bill of Rights, that pre-existed the Declaration of Rights, and was always there. Now, making sure you understand this, what they tried to say during the reason why they brought up the Poaching Act is because they was misusing that act to disarm anyone that they considered wasn't on their side, right? Which is a bit like what's going on now. And they said, we're not accepting that anymore. You will never subvert the laws of England again. All of that is in the English Bill of Rights, right? The few post-1686 prosecutions under the Statute of Northampton all involve persons who were behaving dangerously with arms, e.g. Rex versus Dewhurst, one state trials, NS 529, 601, 602, 1820. A man has a clear right to protect himself when he is going singly or in a small party upon the road where he is travelling or going for the ordinary purposes of business. But I have no difficulty in saying you have no right to carry arms to a public meeting. If the number of arms which are so carried are calculated to produce terror and alarm, discussing constitutionality of a temporary law against arms carrying by rebels in 6 counties. And then it goes on and it tells you more of the history of that particular event, right? And again, so hopefully Jason might have received an email off me. If he has, he should be able to log in. I mean, I'd have to talk to an American, and it operates differently in every state. But as far as I'm aware, every state, if you go on a protest march or a protest or a large assembly, you're not supposed to take guns, all right, for obvious reasons. Let's have a look and see. I don't know, what do you think the temperature is here today? It's in the 90s, isn't it?
33, 34.
Is it in the 90s?
Yeah. It was about 33, 34.
It's hot, isn't it?
Mm.
I might, if you think, pop down to sea or something tomorrow and have a dip. So I'll go and see if I can get some swimming trunks. Yeah. That'd be funny, wouldn't it? Or should we have a dip in that little river over there?
In the river. I
could go in there, couldn't I? Sit in there.
We could do that.
Could have frozen nuts by the weekend. So, let me have a look. Let Graham know I'm here to talk if he'd like. Well, Jason, I have just sent you a link out to your email address. I hope we don't have the same problems as we had before. I think you should get it. I'm really Cooties on my phone doesn't show the live chat, but we are still listening. Oh, that's all right. Don't worry, Daz and Juicy and Lucy. I imagine you're absolutely sweltering down there. That Russian tanker that was confiscated in the channel is now moored up right next to us, and all the oil has been taken off. Oh, really? Right, so let me come off of that a second. Right, we're going back on there. So all I'm doing at the moment is just explaining to people. There's been a number of cases in America, right? So if you look at other things that have happened, one Muldoon case, Muldoon versus Fitzgerald, I think it was in 1976, where they had an issue in New Zealand, right? And the New Zealand High Court heard the case where a subject to the realm in New Zealand said, the government can't do this. They try to scrap a law, but without putting it through Parliament. The government did, and the subject to the realm in New Zealand said, "You can't do that. We got a Bill of Rights, the English Bill of Rights." And it went to the High Court, and the High Court said, "No, you most certainly have, because they're all in singular and they're forever. You can't remove them." Right. So there's many cases in which we can argue that, and again, the Houseby's Laws of England tell you quite blatantly that the constitutional law is the highest law, and it can be used in any court case, in any court in a country, right? Whether it's tort law, whether it's criminal law, whatever, the equity law even, right, where it will turn around and say, in fact, I think the Constitution of America forbids certain elements of equity law being used. But let me have a look and see what comes up. Mechanic should discreet canny feats, nosy poke. British piracy, robbing Russian oil, but won't drill it in the North Sea for our own oil. Holly, England, bearable in Cumberland, but still warm. It is hot here. I can tell you that now. And in London, it's over 100. So just to make sure everyone's aware of that. So people in London are getting absolutely baked. I wouldn't like to know what it's like in some of them flats, I've got to tell you. Let me see who this is. Oh, nearly knocked my coffee over. It looks like Jason is coming in. So you're now going to see one of the... So if people want to pop in, they can. Let me see if I can put this on Duo. I'm not sure if it should be on Duo or not. Let me have a look. Where's he gone? Jason, you're in the chat, but for some reason you ain't coming up. You've come up that you've joined, but you've not come up. Maybe your camera's not set up or your mic's not set up for Rumble on your phone or your computer or whatever. But you're there nearly. Oh, let me see if this comes up. Right, you might have to say hello to see if you come up.
Hey, Graham, how you doing?
I'm very well, Jason. How are you?
Good. I'm in Alaska, do my work. It is 11:30, so it's pretty early for me. Just to let you know, I learned about you from Vindicator, and Vindicator, I kind of when I was at work, I was hearing news about what's going on in the UK. So I, led from me to Vindicator to you, obviously. And the funny thing is when I was a kid, I was born in 1968. So when I was a kid, let's say around 1980, 81, American Werewolf in London comes out. Of course, you see the villagers shoot the werewolf on the moors. As a kid, I didn't own a gun at the time. I'm too young. I assumed gun, protection was and defense was completely legal in England, just like it was in the US. I had no idea. Well, as I got older, I became a big Anglophile, and I started reading about Admiral Nelson and the history and the founding and all that. And I started getting into guns. So when I got my first gun, I got the NRA magazine, Guns and Ammo, and certain magazines, and that's where I saw about the 1689 Bill of Rights and the English Constitution. And this is the 80s. Of course, there's no computer, so you can't research much more than that unless you buy books, obviously.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing this. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know it came from the English Constitution, because in school, they teach you all about the American Constitution, but the way they teach it to you, it seems to be like almost like there was never Englishmen there. White people sprouted from the ground, and they call themselves Americans.
Yeah.
And you get the impression that we just made this up. So I finally realized it was not the case, but I didn't know all of it. And of course, now during the computer age, when I saw you and everything you were teaching, I was like, wow, that's great that they're getting that out there, because a lot of English people don't know that our Constitution comes from you guys. And I remember the first time I read the Bill of Rights, and I'm looking side by side the U.S., I'm like, wait a minute, this is a copy. This is the exact same thing. And then in your brain, it clicks. You're like, well, obviously, 98% of the people that signed the Constitution were Englishmen. There was a few Welshmen, a few Scots, Irish, and maybe like a German. But 98% of these guys were all English. Obviously, they wanted to carry over the common law and their rights over to the United States. And then as I watched your show more and more things clicked in my head. In the 80s, in the 70s, they told us we're going metric. By the 80s, they were putting miles per hour and kilometers per hour below. Then by late 80s, it disappeared completely. Of course, it didn't really click in my head. And when I looked on the internet, why that happened is because people were refusing to convert. And I never saw the conversion. The only thing we really have metric in here is our Coke bottles. They'll say a 2 liter, but it has the ounces, obviously. And then at my work, this is recent, I saw a water heater, 2 of them. This is for the maintenance guys. It said gallons and it said imperial gallons. I saw there was a difference. I was like, well, how is that different? Why would imperial gallons be different? So I looked on the internet. Well, it says imperial started in 1826. So then I went on the internet. I looked up what measurements where ours came from. And it said, lo and behold, English measurements came from the Elizabethan era called the Winchester standard and something else. So the only thing that's different is a liquid volume or some types of volume. I'm not sure the full details. So basically, 1.5 of English pints is 1 imperial pint. But otherwise else, feet, yards, inches, everything else is the same. For some reason, in 1826, the British increased the volume, especially liquid, for some reason. I don't know why. And that's why you have a long ton and a short ton. Basically, an English ton is 2,000 pounds, an imperial ton is 2,400 pounds. So something happened, and I don't know the reason why they decided to up volume in some cases for this. But yeah, we never converted, and we still to this day refuse to. I mean, you'll almost never hear anybody speak metric unless they were in the military.
Well,
really, that's
the funny. So you have a 38, I believe, which is the old measurement for a 9mm, if I've got that the right way round. So there's a 38 shell for a handgun, or a round for a handgun, and it might be it's so fractionally different. It's virtually a 9mm.
It is. So, for example, the 9mm, and there's what they call the 9mm short in German. So, the Americans, to not get confused, they decide to use imperial measurements, and they call it .380. So, you buy a gun, you have a 9mm, or you have the 380, and we both know what it is as far as if you're a gun owner. It's very easy. Just like 7.62 is 308 Winchester. You know, that's inches. .308 is 30 caliber. So I know if anybody says 7.62, I know they're talking 30 caliber. It's very easy, you know, for me, because I was a gunsmith in the Army for a shooting team. So I'm very familiar with a lot of that. I worked with the British Army. They came in. We've talked to them. I retired from the Army in 2019. And but yeah, it's sometimes it's just incredible that they forced all the metrics on the English and the British when this was their measurement.
So let me tell you the story of that. When I was a kid, up until 1971, I had learned what's known as old money, pound, shilling, and pence, right? And all of our own old measurements, feet and inches, eighths, sixteenths, and all that, all of that. I can't remember how old I was in 1970. How old was I in 1971? 7, right? Then they changed it to metric, right? And they forced it on everyone. But just to make sure, so you understand, not everyone accepted it, right? Apart from me screaming my head off at an ice cream man because he wouldn't give me an ice cream because I never give him enough money, right? In 2002, there was a big case in England, and it was heard by a judge called Sir John Laws, and it was Fulton versus Sunderland, and it was the pseudo name for it is the metric martyrs case, right? So what you're talking about there is like they started it in America, and Americans said we ain't having this, right? We're not, you know, don't change our clocks, don't change our management, we're not accepting it, right? Well, this particular guy worked on a market stall, right? And he used to sell fruit and veg. And he basically, the whole story was that he got arrested as a criminal offence in England for doing a job he'd always done all his life, and he refused to sell bananas in metric. He would only sell them in pounds, right? So I've done a whole show about, I don't know how many years ago now, 10 or 15 years ago, dressed up with a suit on, with a pound of bananas on my shoulder, talking about the metric martyrs case. And then, but people don't realise how significant that case was in English law, because what Sir John Laws did, whilst he didn't go with the metric martyr of Sunderland, what he did say was that constitutional law, there is a hierarchy of laws in England, and constitutional law, ancient laws and customs, entrenched law, that set of laws is the highest law in the land. You cannot go against it. And the reason why he was saying, the judge, that you couldn't go against the metric was because it come in as a subset, in other words, a lower authority, but part of the authority of something called the European Communities Act of 1972. And he said that was constitutional because there was a referendum. I disagree with that, by the way, but that's what he said. And he said, because it's constitutional, anything that comes off of it is also law. And you need to understand that they've made them laws and you need to abide by it. And therefore it is a criminal offence, right? So the guy some years later died, obviously died, but he tried his hardest to say, I am not accepting this. So there was lots of people that stood up and said, we're not accepting this, right? Getting back to the gun situation that you've sent me that case, and I'm really grateful for, because I never see that. That didn't. I get lots of things sent to me from on my emails with English laws that are coming out from all the different courts, and some of them are important, some of them are not majorly important, but some of them are. But that one is particularly important because we got some cases coming up in England to do with the right to keep and bear arms. Now, what most people watching this, and especially on the American side, and many on this side, don't realise that we have represented people, and when I say represented, I mean as a McKenzie friend, two individuals that have put forward a constitutional argument in a criminal case, especially if they've been arrested for an offensive weapon, right? One of them people, for example, had an extending police baton, right? It was not extended. It was in his pocket. He'd just been burgled. He was protecting his family, so he had it in his pocket. The police knocked on his door and said, come out. He come out of the house. Because it was hanging out of his pocket, they pulled gas out and was going to gas him. He didn't freak out. He didn't do anything. He just pulled it out and gave it to them, right? So they arrested him for an offensive weapon. I wrote his case stated, which contained all of our self-defense laws, including the High Court, and fairly recent in the 1980s. What a lot of people don't know is a guy got found not guilty for making Molotov cocktails, and what the police arrested him for, this was during a riot, by the way, right? And what the police arrested, he did it because he was protecting his store, right, or his shop, which was his living and his home. The rioters, this is, I mean, it was all over the news and everything. They was burning down everything, right? So when the rioters started coming towards him, he had nothing to defend himself. He didn't have a gun. He didn't have anything. So what he did was he poured petrol into bottles, put a thing on them, and literally said, if you come near me, I'm going to do the lot of you, right? And they backed away from his store. This is an Englishman, right? They backed away from his store, but the police arrested him, right, for manufacturing explosive material, right, and tried to do him for terrorism. This is going back to the 80s, right? So it went to the High Court, and the High Court said, no, that is not happening, right? He only made those Molotov cocktails to defend himself, his family, and his property, and he has a right as an Englishman to do that. He has the right to self-defense, right? And that come from the highest court in the land. No one ever refers to that, right?
Never heard it, Graham. Never heard it.
Right, so what we've done is, in a couple of these cases, I've got to be honest with you, some people come to me and they are blatantly... So I've read something else earlier. I'm not sure if you caught the show, but basically the judges in previous years have said it's all about intent, if you're carrying a weapon and your only intent is self-defense, self-preservation, and the preservation of life and limb, there is no issue with that whatsoever. It's perfectly lawful. It's when you have a weapon for malintent. So if you use your weapon and you kill someone and you go before a jury and you get done for murder, the likelihood is you're going to hang, right? That's English law. So everyone knows where they stand. The point I'm trying to make to you is these people in the background, they have been brainwashed into believing something that's untrue by a Marxist media, a Marxist legal system, and in some cases, Marxist judges. But when you present the law to them, and you show them, and especially these 3 cases, because they're very powerful, but you've got to claim your right. If you don't claim it, you've lost it. And people need to understand that. But in America, for example, I mean, we've just been obviously talking about the right to keep and bear arms, but some states have got more restrictions than what they should have. I mean, what's Alaska like?
Yes. So Alaska is pretty much, you can have everything you need, anything you want. You can conceal carry without a license. We have the castle doctrine, which means your home is your castle. You don't have to do to retreat. Somebody gets in your house.
Yeah.
What else? Just basically everything. Oh, stand your ground if you're in public and somebody confronts you and your life is threatened, or your loved one's life is threatened, or your friend, you can defend them. So I was going to explain it to you real quick, go through the history of gun control really quick for the United States. So 1930s, us and you both did the same thing. They went after machine guns and stuff after the veterans from the First World War.
Yeah.
The excuse for the United States was for gangsters, for the mafia. So they banned that. We didn't have any other gun laws until 1968. And guess when the British did their next act? 1968. Yeah. So you look at the British and the American 1968 gun control acts, your signalized gun control acts happen around the same time. Now, growing up as a kid, I found out that pretty much the only constitutional carry state was Vermont, still from the 1700s, never changed the law. In every other state in the 80s, nobody else could carry, and Florida was the only one that issued carry permits. Now, from the 2000s, there's been massive cases, besides just the Bruin case and all these other cases, and McDonald. It's incredible. So now it is 29, almost 30 states that have concealed carry without a license, the castle doctrine, the defense of wherever you're at. It's moving incredibly quick right now. We've gained a lot of rights back. Right now, we just had a big case happen with the ATF, which is the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Yeah.
So they have these triggers that basically, if you put in your AR-15, now we can have semi-automatics, but we can't have machine guns, but it has to be registered, and you pay a $200 tax. But if you want something similar, they were making these triggers that simulated full auto fire.
Yeah.
And the ATF approved it, and then later on said, no, we're not going to approve this. And they took it back. So they took them to court, and we've won. These triggers now, we won by the exact letter of the law. So the 1934 Firearms Act said basically multiple shots within the function of one function of the trigger. These triggers basically reset it. They're called force reset. So it goes forward. You hold your finger on it. It's going back and forth. So it's a technicality, and you have the same rate of fire as a machine gun. But because it's resetting for you, that's it. So we won the case. They realized that, hey, you can't do that. So the ATF reneged on that and said, okay, you guys can have your force reset triggers. But it was only in the circuit court. It didn't get to the Supreme Court fully because the ATF backed down. So a lot of pro-gun people were kind of pissed. They wanted to kind of still force it forward because it was based on actual law. Right now, the 1934 NFA is also falling. They took off the $200 tax for suppressors, which is silencers, suppressors, and short barrel rifles. And in the Congress, when they took this away, then everybody said, hey, you only have the power to tax. And that was the excuse in the 1934 NFA, because they couldn't ban it. They just said, we're going to tax it and make you register it, because they knew they couldn't ban it. So what they did is, once they done away with the $200 tax in Congress, the pro-gunner said, we got you. Now there's no tax. you're not supposed to be able to regulate this because you're only able to regulate taxes by the Constitution. So now that's starting to happen. It's starting to roll through the court system. So massively since I've been a kid, we've gained so much pro-gun rights back. It's not even funny. Now the states you're talking about, like California, Washington, Oregon, we call the left coast, and New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, where Chicago's at, they're all leftist-controlled states. So they have these assault weapon bans. And basically it's, if you have an M16 looking gun, but it's only semi-automatic, we don't care. We're still going to ban it. And your 30-round magazines. A lot of them are falling and failing. And this is the case we're waiting to get to the Supreme Court level because a lot of different circuits have said, hey, you can't do this. But those states out west, their circuits are all leftist judges, communist Marxists, like you're saying. They don't want to accept it. So right now we're waiting for that to get to the Supreme Court. So that forces those 9 or 10 states that are banning over 30-round magazines and, any type of guns that look military. Because the common weapons in common use from the Brune decision, that is the actual reading of the law. And they're not listening. So they're being rechallenged and they're losing at even the local levels. Florida even had one recently where just a local homeowners association was kind of like a council of a neighborhood. They banned guns in their parks or any of their public spaces. Well, the Attorney General of Florida went and said, if you do this, we're taking you to court and we're taking you personally to court, not just your association, you personally. You got this much time to get rid of it or you're done.
Now, again, people don't realize the power of the common law and the power of tort. So we've got a declaration, which is private law, and we've also got public law, which is the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is a criminal prohibition against the government or parliament from stopping us from having guns, right? And that's the bit that people don't understand. It's both the government are criminally forbidden from taking our guns off us because it says never we should never surrender our rights again. Basically, they're supposed to be looking after it. But getting back to what you just said, because I think this is really important, and I'm glad you're here saying this. You're saying that there was a progression of taking your guns away. Then people started to say, hang on a minute, constitutionally, you can't do this. Then people started to claim their rights. Now, all of a sudden, you've got, instead of 3 states that was allowed to have firearms, not hundreds, but tens of states have now got concealed carry back without a license.
Correct. It's 29 or almost 30. North Carolina, we're waiting on. It passed both houses, but the Democratic governor kicked it back. But if they have enough people, they can override it. So they're waiting to get a more majority for this election of Republicans. And if they have enough Republicans, they can override his veto and make the 30th state, which would be North Carolina, to carry without a license. Now, all the states have to permit you to carry now with a license because of the Brune decision. Before they didn't even give you that. Like Hawaii got sued for that. They said, no, we're only going to give only certain people, and you have to have a good reason. And Scalia said basically, not Scalia, Clarence Thomas said, no. You have to give everybody the right to use it. They don't need a reason. It's a constitutional. You can give it. The license part hasn't been fully solved yet because they only attack it narrowly. So the Supreme Court only answers the question narrowly. And they said, hey, you have to give everybody a right, whether it's licensed or not licensed. They have to have the ability to get that, and you can't have delay on it. That's one of
the second point of what you're saying there, and this is really important, especially to Americans listening to this, and especially to the English listening to this, right? If they make it so expensive through taxation or regulation that it in effect means most people couldn't afford one, then that is in effect taking away your right by another route, and that will be struck down by the court, right? So people need to understand, the more people pushing forward and saying, And this is not just about the right to keep and bear arms. We have 13 rights in the English Bill of Rights, and every one of them, including juries, right, is now being attacked. And they started to attack, like you've still got in America, grand juries.
Yes, we do.
The British took them off us in 1929, 1930s.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
But when people understand, so America, listen, I love America, right? When I go out there, first thing I'll do is straight into a gun range, and most people standing around. I had a copper in there who was shooting with me, and he went, like, you're the first Englishman I've ever met that can shoot, right? And I went, and I was just joking. I said, yeah, it's the English militia. When I come back from America, all of my cases have been searched because they had Claudite on them, right? There was Claudite inside the thing. The dogs have, like, said he's got, he's been around guns, and they was like, and they put a little note in each case just to say that they'd been there. I said, thanks very much when I got here. But just to make sure, I'm going to read this out again because this is from this particular bit of thing. It says that the subjects which are Protestants may have arms for their defence suitable for their conditions and as allowed by law. Now, what the law courts in England have been saying, right, the lefties, is as allowed by law, we are allowed to make a law to restrict your right. No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is as allowed by law for self-defence, an ancient law and custom that pre-existed the English Bill of Rights, and they was reaffirming by putting in a positive law in the Bill of Rights. That's what it actually means. And it confirms that, and Justice Scalia confirmed that. But then it says, and I think this is important, from then until 1870, think about the date of 1870, there's two reasons for that, right? When a tax was imposed on public handgun carry in England, right? No English law restricting an individual peacefully carrying a gun for lawful defence, and there are no known cases of any such prosecutions, right? Why is 1870 important? And there's two reasons for it. First, and the first reason that's really important, is the British created and caused a colour revolution of the Civil War in the United States of America. The British did that again. In the 1860s, the Civil War was caused by the British, not the English, right? The southern states of America were largely Protestant, right? And what you'll see from what went on after that whole area from the 1840s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right, is Karl Marx. And Karl Marx was in conversation with Abraham Lincoln in the United States of America, right?
Wow.
And then when you move all the way forward to 1936, I believe it was, just outside Chicago, there was a massive communist convention, and there was over 100,000 people there, right? Just think about this in 1936, a communist convention, and the three images, massive images they had on the stage. Like, everyone should understand from the English side of it, I'm talking about a massive American stadium, right? Not like our fish bowls, like a big American stadium. Three big images on the stage. The first was Joseph Stalin. The second was Lenin, right? Vladimir Lenin. And the third, and most importantly, was Abraham Lincoln. Why is that? Why do the communists regard Abraham Lincoln as one of them? And then when you start to see what happened and how they started to push forward, you start to understand how they've attacked and attacked and attacked. And I keep saying to people, the reason why they're attacking England is because of the common law. It is the opposite to Roman law jurisdiction, which is what they're trying to impose around the world. So a group of people write the law, basically, and everyone else becomes a slave. And the common law stops that.
Graham, another way they got us, the leftists, was turn of the century, 1900s. They basically did the 17th Amendment, and you read that. So before, you had your House of Representatives, which I guess were your House of Commons, and it went by the population of state. Whatever your population in your state was, you got proportion to your representatives. The Senate was 2 per state, and basically your state legislature, they would send your 2 senators, because it was 2, didn't matter the size of it, it was for equal representation for each state, so one state didn't dominate the other on the Senate side. So each state gets 2 senators. And that was by the actual state legislature that sent them and elected, not the people. Well, the 17th Amendment, they said, we don't want to do that anymore. We want to give that to the people to vote directly, not the state. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. The senator is supposed to be the representative of the state, of the legislature. The people vote for the representatives in the state to go to Congress. And then the state legislature votes for the senators to go there. What now the problems it's causing is you could have a fully red state and they have all these representatives that are Republicans, but they'll have like 1 out of 2 that's a Democrat for senators because of the money and maybe the cheating that they're doing. Where before it wasn't the case, because if your state government sent 2 Republican senators, they're going to send 2 Republican senators always and never have a difference and have a red state with a Democratic senator. So that 17th Amendment screwed it up. That was all turn of the century. Same thing with the income tax. Same thing with the 1934 Firearms Acts. All the stuff was the beginning of that progressive era, we call it, with Teddy Roosevelt and what do you call it? I can't remember his name. Woodrow Wilson, the president of the First World War. There were big progressives in that turn of the century area.
They was. And funny, so as you're talking about that, I'm actually looking at the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment was ratified on April the 8th, 1913. The 16th Amendment was ratified February the 3rd, 1913. And what you're finding is this progression, and that progression happened around the Federal Reserve when they started to take control of the finances of the people, because that coincides with that. But that's what it says, the 17th Amendment. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors. Oh, there it goes. Or of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. But the thing is, there needs to be some tweaking there. But just to make sure, let me see if I can bring this up.
Yeah, you can't recall those senators back then. In those days, before that 17th Amendment, if the Republican legislature sent, let's say the two senators they sent weren't doing good, they could recall them and say, "You're coming back." Now, because it's to the people and it's voted on, the people can't call them back. So basically, you're stuck.
Let me see if I can show you this, because there's a strategy and a plan by Rupert Lowe that I'm seeing at the moment. Again, I don't think like normal people. I don't mean that in a rude way. I mean, I think strategically of what they're trying to do. I'm going to bring something up on your screen. I think this is really interesting, what you've just said, because I keep saying to people that America is a mirror of England in the 1600s and how we was governed, right? And people don't realise that the counties and shires were independently governed. England, in effect, before the Union, was a confederacy, right? It was how America originally started out. So let me just see if I can show this, because it's interesting. You should talk about that. I doubt if you'll be able to see it on the screen. But I'll see if I can bring it up on the screen for people to see this. History of parliamentary constituencies and boundaries in Norfolk. Now, something's happening in Norfolk at the moment where Rupert Lowe has took one of the constituencies. They took a load of the council roles there. He's now looking that they've got a police and crime commissioner for Norfolk. They've put someone forward for that role. It's come up. Just to let everyone know, you don't realise how massive that would be, because it means that the police and commissioner in Norfolk can tell the chief constable of the police, you shall issue firearms for self-defence, including concealed carry, right? People don't realise Norfolk could, within 6 months, could be fully armed, right? from getting one person in place and another group of people in place and the MP in place could be fully armed, right? Just this is strategic thinking, I think, from theirs, right? But this is really important. A number of seats. So what I'm looking at is prior to, this is in Norfolk, right? And Norfolk is a county or a shire in the east of England, right? It's an excellent place to go if anyone ever wants to go there, right? So prior to 1832, it had 2 county seats, right? Prior to 1832. So,
hey, Graham, not to interrupt, but do you still have sheriffs? And are sheriffs actually functioning the same way they used to, or
no.
okay?
But again, your sheriff. So I've said this before. Get back on sheriffs in a minute because it's really important. And then you've got borough seats, 10, total 12. So what you'll see from the old way of doing it there is what Jason has just described from literally from the American 17th Amendment. The state or the county gets 2 people sent in, right? But again, we got a slightly different way of doing it from the Lord's point of view. But then 10 seats are divided up between the whole county, right, or shire, and then you get 12 in total. But let me get back because I thought that was interesting what you've just said there. But getting back to so we've still got, I think you've still got them in most. I mean, you've still got 4 Commonwealths in America, which a lot of people don't know. But in America, you've still got lieutenant. I think they're called Lord Lieutenants, or not Lord Lieutenants, but there's an Attorney Lieutenant or something like that. We used to have,
Attorney General, and Lieutenant Attorney General. Yes.
Right. So in England, we've got Lord Lieutenants. The Lord Lieutenant was the person in the county that directly conveyed from the people to the king. It was almost like on par with the Privy Council.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
They've now been made ceremonial. That's all they ever do. They say ceremonial, and that's the Marxist taking away our proper management. But getting back to what you've just said there about the different people and how they do things, I can't remember what state it was. There was a particular state, I think it was Florida.
That's where I'm from originally. That's where I grew up, is Florida.
It's Florida. Right. So in this book, right, which is More Guns, Less Crime, which is in its
John
first
Locke, very
edition.
familiar with that. Yes.
Yeah, right. So in that, he says, and by the way, he started writing it just for the audience to know. He started writing it because he's an extreme lefty and he wanted to ban guns. By the time he'd gone through all his research, he decided more guns means less crime and everyone should go and get a gun. Right? He completely changed his mind. But one of the things that he noted in that book, I think it was Miami in Florida, they said they had a massive crime rate. And overnight, they changed the concealed carry laws to you could have a concealed carry.
Yep.
And the crime rate plummeted overnight because all of a sudden the criminal went, oh, hang on a minute. Instead of it being the situation that you've got, when you ban everyone from having guns, the only people who have got guns are criminals.
Yes.
So the only people who are going to get hurt are law-abiding people because they can't defend themselves against a criminal who's got a gun, and a criminal doesn't go and get licensed.
Right? Well, Graham, and one thing for your audience is also when they Google statistics and they see, for example, if you Google right now, 2025, you have 38,000 gun deaths. What they don't tell you unless you go to the FBI website is 2/3 of all gun deaths, no matter what year, are suicides. So on the average, it's 13,000 people. When you do 13,000 people by 341 million, it's like 0.000 people actually die from being murdered. And even in the homicide category of that 13,000, you have actual murders, police shootings, and defensive shootings. The police shootings and defensive shootings are classified as justifiable homicides. So it's really tricky. So that's just how the left tricks people and puts in the news, both in England and the US. They say, Oh,
Yeah.
38,000 people died of gun violence. Well, yeah, 2/3 of them were suicides, and only 13,000 were homicides. And of the 13,000, a smaller portion were actual murders, not police and defensive shootings. So when you look at that, you have to understand that these leftists are so evil and corrupt, and they're trying to disarm everybody. Even here, they still, well, really, the jig's up here now. There's so much with the internet and also information and all the pro-gun channels on YouTube. The Congress has not been able to pull the wool over people's eyes anymore. That's the one blessing. I really hate the internet, and I hate all the technology in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm born in 1968. I grew up old school, but it's been a blessing in other ways. And in this way of people knowing knowledge, not have to go to somebody for advice on what statistics are. They can look themselves and they could see it, and they could go to FBI websites and look this up and not rely on one of the three main news medias back in the 70s or 80s. You only had four channels back in the 70s or 80s when I was a kid. So you're watching ABC News and you're thinking that gun control, guns are murders are out of control. It's going crazy. And then you go out in the streets, you never see anything. You don't hear nothing. I mean, I have a lot of guns. All my friends have guns. I don't know anybody's been shot. Like I said, if you do 13,000 people out of 341 million people, that's such a small statistics. And if you Google accidental deaths in the United States, it's 192,000. 75,000 people die of accidental poisoning. That's 75,000 people. 49,000 people die of slip, trips, and falls. So that shows you how small it is. So people, if you guys in the UK, if you're scared to come to the US, I promise you, your chances of being shot are slim to none, or even hearing a gun go off in any civilized place. Not only that, for the last statistic, is that 2% of counties is where 90% of these murders take place. 2% of counties. So your chance of even running into this stuff is slim. Like I said, I don't know anybody that's ever been killed.
And just to make sure everyone is aware of this, I've been to America on a number of occasions, and I always felt safe. The Americans I was with always used to say to me, "There's certain areas that we don't go in, right?
Correct.
So if you're a tourist, don't go there, right? Because they will be on you because they're thieves, they're nasty, they just don't care, right? But they don't care about anyone, right? But in particular, Washington, DC, I mean, the capital of America, literally one of the suburbs right by the White House was probably the most unsafe place anywhere in America. And everyone was told, whatever you do, don't go there, right? And then when President Trump come in, he literally put the order out. I want every one of them criminals rounded up, every one of them people that are on bail or have offended, take them out. Right, and that's exactly what happened. I think there was 2,000 arrests in a week. Right, they locked a whole lot up, and then President Trump walked into a restaurant in the same area and said, "Now we're all safe."
Yes, the left likes crime. They like crime because it gives them reasons to take away your rights. That's why the left likes crime, and they release these people. And I don't want to get banned in YouTube or anything, but we all know the persuasion of the people that commit. If you look on statistics, 85% of people in prison for murder are of a certain persuasion. And in the US, they're 13% of the overall population ethnically. So that should tell you something.
I get that entirely. I get that so much so. I come from London. I now live in a rural community, right? I literally went somewhere the other day where loads of young girls and, as I was pointed out, young men was, semi-naked on the beach and whatever, wasn't a single problem. But you've started seeing them people start to come into the rural areas because they've already attacked the cities. And they have done that with America. Once they control the cities, then they come out to the rural areas. And that's when it all goes. But let me get back to what you just said about all your friends carrying guns. Polite society is what I call it. It makes a polite society. You don't start throwing punches at someone just because you're bigger than that person. Because if that person has got a gun, they have a legitimate reason to believe that you may be taking their gun and can use that gun against you.
Correct. So I went through a gun class, just my own volition. It's not required in Alaska at all. I decided to apply for the carry license, and there's a reason why I decided to do it. So being in Alaska, I can carry without a license. I can do everything I want, no problem. But if I travel to other states, that's, it depends on their laws. But if I have a carry concealed license and I took a class from Alaska, I have reciprocity with 38 other states, which means if I go home to see my mom in Florida and I have my Alaska license, my license now is valid in Florida, even though Florida has constitutional carry. Now it doesn't matter. Another advantage of having a concealed carry license in Alaska is you don't have to worry about a background check when you buy a gun.
Yeah.
And the reason is because when you have that, you already have a constant background check going. And if you do something and end up in jail or you do a crime, they pull your license from you anyways, and it'll come up with the computer. So here's the process when you buy a gun in the United States. You go into a gun store, you fill out a form, the guy calls the FBI, real quick background check, and it comes in a second. They either say proceed or don't proceed. If they don't not sure and something's wrong, the guy has to still give you the gun. They have a certain amount of time. I think it's like 24 hours or whatever, and you can come pick up your gun. So you still get it. If the ATF doesn't get back within 24 hours, it's very rare you get something like that, like an undecided something weird. I don't think I've ever met anybody that's happened to. And denials are very rare because criminals are not dumb. They're not going to go in there and get checked by the FBI, and all of a sudden the jig is up for them where they're located at. Plus, it's another charge. But this form you fill out is supposed to stay with the dealer. The government doesn't have access, so guns are not registered in the United States. So here's how they solve a crime if they find a gun. So when a gun is manufactured, it has a serial number. Yeah. Let's say Winchester. Winchester sells all the guns out to all 50 states. And then when they give it to the gun stores have their serial numbers. So when you fill out that form, it has your name and the serial number of the gun you have. Now, this form stays inside the gun store. It does not go to the FBI or the ATF. So let's say the police find a gun on the floor in the state that you bought the gun in, what they're going to do is they're going to look at the serial number and they go, oh, let me call Winchester and find out what dealer this came from, because they don't have the information. They don't know. Winchester goes, oh, I sold it to Bob's gun store in Anchorage, Alaska. Then they'll go over to Bob's gun store in Anchorage, Alaska and say, hey, we got this serial number. Can we look through your 4473 forms? They'll look through it and go, oh, this guy Tom has it. He sold it. They'll go to Tom's house. Hey, Tom, do you still have this gun? No, I sold that at a gun show years ago. Ah, shit. Okay. Now you're dead. You're dead in the water. There's no trace for it because here's why. They don't regulate private sales. I can sell my gun to you at any time to anybody I want at a gun show or in person, at work, whatever. Hey, Graham, I got this AR-15. I need a little bit of money, $500. You want it? Sure, Jason. You pay the $500. I give it to you. We're done. So the trail, if I'm the original buyer of that gun, the trail stops cold. I could say easily and just say, hey, I sold that 20 years ago. I have no idea. I can't remember who the guy was. So that's where the trail ends. Now they're trying to close that loophole, the Democrats, because they want to track guns. What they're trying to do is pass this gun show law. They're going, oh, it's a gun show loophole. We need to regulate guns at gun shows and private sales. There's a reason why, because they want to trail to every owner of that gun. So if you buy a lot of private guns and you don't go to a gun store specifically, that gun is, if it's 20 or 30 years old, it might have passed through 20 hands already, and there's no way to track where that gun's gone. But the Democrats are always trying to close that hole with a gun show loophole bill. And of course, we always fight it. It never comes close to passing. It probably never will. It'd be pretty hard because we're getting so many rights now with this 6-3 court, 6 conservative constitutional originalists, and the three leftist judges, right? Graham, you can, when you're done with this show, go check out the show, The 4 Boxes Diner. It's called The 4 Boxes Diner. And it's a lawyer, Mark Smith, who advises the Trump administration on gun control and stuff and specifics. He's a great guy to watch his channel. This is where I get all my information from. That even when I put forward to you, I watched his last video on this whole case. It's great. And he calls it The 4 Boxes Diner because the 4 boxes of liberty. The ballot box, the soap box, the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. And I'm not sure on who the originator of that expression is. It might have been an Englishman, or it could have been a founding father. I'm not sure. But it's the 4 boxes of liberty. Yeah, the soap box for First Amendment, obviously. What did I say? What did I say? What was the word? The jury box, the soap box, cartridge box, and one more.
And the vote.
The voter, the ballot box. Yes.
Ballot box.
That was the 4 boxes of liberty. So,
No,
yeah,
I agree
4 o'clock is
entirely.
done.
So on the other side of it, again, for both the audiences, so American audiences and the English audience, what a lot of people don't understand is Switzerland is never mentioned by any of the lefties, anyone in the UK, and it has the right to keep and bear arms. In fact, so much so, I think it's something like 50 or 60% of the population are armed, and the government supply 50 rounds of ammunition to every citizen with a firearm to keep their eye in. So the government actually supply rounds of ammunition to go to. So in other words, they keep the whole process of using firearms always continuing. One, for the defence of Switzerland, but two, so people don't just leave a firearm sitting there for years and then go to use it and they've forgotten how to use it. Every year they have to go to the range, or they don't have to, but they give them 50 rounds. So if you've got 50 rounds, you go and book a slot and go and use the 50 rounds. But again, there's no mass shootings there. I think there's been one in 30 years, and that was someone who was mentally ill. But they have got a lower group of people of a certain ethnicity, right? And also, they have a far greater mental health system, a far better mental health system. So they would make sure that certain individuals, like for example, if they're suffering from depression, they get far less people committing suicide with firearms over there, right? Because they're talking to people with mental illness,
Yes.
and then you've got so many other issues to do with suicide. Like you've mentioned that. I think there's other things that people should mention as well. I mean, if you look at medical malpractice in America, that figure far outweighs any other deaths in America. It is like massive.
Yes.
And yet no one ever mentions it. And these people are not put in prison. Some of it is so bad, a bit like England, is so bad that them doctors should be put in prison, because often they have lied on their resumes or their CVs to say what they can and can't do.
And Graham, they don't care about those deaths because it's not a threat to their power. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
None of those deaths are a threat to their power.
No, I agree entirely. But no, I'm pleased that you've come on. Hopefully, if we get any more, there are things coming up, and there's some cases coming up in England to do with the right to bear arms and defensive. Again, we've won, I think it's 2 or 3 cases. But again, the cases are not, they don't want these cases going up the chain. So what they do is they'll give them a not guilty. Everyone walks away and shuts their mouth, right? That's the way that they operate. So you're not going to get you're not going to get big. There's one coming up now that could touch and kick up into the Supreme Court. There's another one that could kick up into the Supreme Court. My personal opinion is that the powers that be will lose their bottle and just give the person on one hand, give the person a not guilty, so it doesn't even go to the jury, because it means that the judge will have to explain the English Bill of Rights and our right to keep and bear arms to a jury, because they have to correctly direct the jury on the law. And what the law says is you can have any weapon for self-defense as long as your intent is self-defense and not malicious intent.
What would be the likelihood, Graham, of England getting back their sheriffs? Basically, in the United States, we have the sheriff is kind of like the highest law enforcement, really, because let's say Florida, like you were talking about, where I grew up, in a county of where I grew up, you had 30 or 40 cities. Well, the local police, the city police, answer to the mayor and only the mayor, and they only had jurisdiction within their small city. The county sheriff could arrest anybody, including the police, the local police, within the whole county, those 30 cities. Now, you do have the state police, which they call state trooper or the highway patrol, but they just do the highways. That's all they do. They don't do actual law enforcement out in the netherworld reaches. They stay on the highway basically, unless they're in a very remote area. If they're in a very remote area like Montana, Alaska, sometimes they'll give them jurisdiction, say, hey, since you're in an unincorporated area, like where I live in Alaska, there's no county, no borough. So we don't have a county sheriff or county borough In this case, yes, the Alaska trooper becomes your law enforcement because there is no other. But if you're in a county or an incorporated area, that sheriff, he's the biggest one in charge. The state doesn't come in.
Is he elected?
And he's elected. He's the only one elected to answer to the people. All the other ones answer to either mayors, or the state governor or something else. But the sheriff is the only one that's elected every 4 years or whatever, depending on where you live, that the people get to vote on. And if he's corrupt, hey, he's gone. They just had a case where a guy, I think it's Kansas. This happened a week ago or a couple of weeks ago. I saw in the newspaper. The guy had found a guy that was diddling his daughter, and he shot the guy, killed him. Went to court. They said, not guilty, not guilty. Now he's running for sheriff in Kansas.
Really?
Yes. I can't remember what his name was. I saw the news a little bit ago.
How long ago do you think that was?
Probably sometime within this year. You figure by the time we got to the news of him running, since it's a past couple of weeks that he's running in the news, it might happen 6 months ago, 8 months ago, the actual case.
Well, a similar thing is happening now, believe it or not, in England with the Manchester mayor, because the person being put forward by Restore Britain, which is Rupert Lowe and his team, the guy's name is Marlon West, and his daughter is one of the rape and torture victims of the Pakistani Muslims, right? So he is now being put forward for the people of Manchester to elect him, and then he will have control of the police in Manchester.
Wow. And that'd be the same thing in the United States. If you put the situation where he actually went and shot and killed the guy that did this to his daughter, and he got charged, and of course, not guilty. The whole jury said, no, not guilty. Not guilty. And all of a sudden now the guy's running for governor, or not governor, mayor. This case, it's a county sheriff for us, which we're hoping. I hope he wins. Of course, the news media is going to do everything they can to probably beat this guy up, knowing how they are on the left. But if he does win, that'd be a really incredible thing to happen. That'd be really nice.
No, I agree entirely. Well, what are we coming up to? So I am going to say, because I am absolutely boiling here, and I'll let you get on with your rest of the day. Thank you for coming on at short notice as well, and especially this interesting conversation. I'm going to ask the chat, can you put the English and American flag via the Alaskan flag on there? I'll put it up. But the American flag up on, and most importantly, which it is, the state of Alaska is a really important state. So hopefully we'll get that flag made and put in there. But whack a flag up to say thank you to Jason for popping on. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Graham. You need to run for governor for Texas.
I would love to. Let me tell you something. I would love to be in America running for any office, but hopefully we're not going to run away from the problems we've got here. We're actually going to take back England, and I think that's the only way we can really deal with it.
I hope Steve Hilton wins California. I really hope Steve Hilton wins California.
So
but they're going to cheat. I'm not. I'm being cautiously optimistic. I know they cheat.
No, they do badly. Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you again soon. Don't forget to come back on.
Sure, anytime. Thanks.
Okay, be lucky.
Bye.
Right, so hopefully, that's gone. Right, I'm not sure if I did that properly, by the way. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that little chat. I'm sure you all did. Rebecca, Simon Lacey, thanks, Jason. Sapper69. So hopefully everyone's understand what we're talking about. Hopefully my personal assistance has made a note of the person who's running for mayor in America that was found not guilty, because I need to look that up straight away. I'm going to say thank you to everyone listening and watching. Don't forget, hit the like button. Don't forget to share. And obviously, don't forget to subscribe. The more we get this message out there, the more that people start understanding, as Jason just said, they've started getting their rights back. Believe it or not, they was taken away in America, and the Americans said, no, we ain't having it. Well, we can do the same thing. We've just got to stand up and claim our rights against these people and personally sue anyone that says no, right, or goes against us. That's it. Thank you. Be lucky, and I will see you again tomorrow evening. Hopefully I won't be melting as bad. And I can't find my little... Oh, there I are. I just found myself. There I am. Right, see you later. Don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution for the United States of America and here. There you go. There's the story. I'm going to read this out to everyone.
What now?
A second degree murder case was dismissed against the Arkansas man who won the Republican nomination for Lonoke County Sheriff as he awaited trial on the charge he killed his daughter's accused sexual abuser. Special Circuit Court Judge Ralph Wilson Jr. Cited violations of Aaron Spencer's due process rights in his 19-page ruling. I've got to read that. Dismissing the charge against Spencer, Wilson cited investigators' handling of a dash camera and memory card that had gone missing. Wilson acknowledged the dismissal was an extraordinary and extreme remedy. However, based on the totality of the circumstances and the unique specific and particular facts and circumstances of the case, the court finds that conduct by law enforcement was so egregious that dismissal of this case is warranted, he wrote. Spencer said he was grateful for the ruling and the support he had received in the community. Neighbours here in Lonoke County, people from every part of Arkansas, and folks I've never met from around the world reached out, prayed for us and refused to stay quiet, he said in a statement. When I couldn't speak for myself, you spoke for me. I'll never be able to thank you the way you deserve, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to live up to it. The Lonoke County Prosecutor's Office said not immediately returned messages seeking comment Thursday afternoon. Spencer won more than 53% of the vote in March's three-person Republican primary for Lonoke County. Well done, that man, right? And it goes on. Let me just explain what Spencer had been charged with second-degree murder in basically that's what we would reference manslaughter. In 2024, death of a man accused for sexually abusing Spencer's teenage daughter. Spencer's trial was originally scheduled for January, but had been postponed. If Spencer had been convicted of the felony charge, he'd been unable to serve as sheriff. Spencer fatally shot Michael Fossler after finding his daughter with him in Fossler's truck, according to court records. Wilson's ruling found that investigators did not follow procedure in their handling of the camera and memory from Fossler's truck. Wilson said the loss of the evidence impaired Spencer's right to a fair trial. No member of this family should ever again be forced to walk into a courtroom and relive this horror. Erin Castellini, Spencer's attorney, said in a statement, his father should have never been charged for protecting his child. The Arkansas Supreme Court in January removed the judges hearing Spencer's case and rescinded an order she had issued that would have restricted the public access to Spencer's trial. Sounds like exactly what they're doing over here. Well, dodgy stuff. A new date for Spencer's trial has not been scheduled yet, but it was second time the court had intervened in the case after the judge had issued a gag order that justices withdrew last year. Spencer has run on promises to protect children from sexual violence, calling for the creation of an investigative unit dedicated to child sexual abuse, grooming, and domestic violence. The sheriff's race has attracted national attention and drew more interest from voters in a rural central Arkansas county than other federal and statewide matchups. Exactly what's going on. Again, anything out of the city Oh, you're getting there. Did everyone hear this? So you've got it there.